Every day, the world moves on as it always has. Cities wake up, work begins, and life feels familiar. But beneath that sense of normality, something is shifting. The climate is changing, and the systems we rely on, energy, food, water, cities, finance, are under pressure in ways we're only beginning to understand. These changes don't live in reports or projections, they are already shaping people, livelihoods, and communities. We created the Climate Leadership Podcast so these challenges don't remain abstract or distant, but are explored through the people working inside these systems, making real decisions with real consequences, often without clear answers. This is not a space for fear, blame, or perfection. It's a space for honest conversations about what leadership looks like in a changing world. If you're listening, you're already part of that leadership. Let's begin the conversation.
Welcome to another episode of the Climate Leadership Podcast. Today's episode explores a critical but often overlooked side of climate action: the infrastructure that connects nature, data, finance, and trust. Agriculture sits at the center of the climate challenge and the climate opportunity. From regenerative practices on the ground to digital systems that track environmental outcomes, the future of climate-smart agriculture depends on how well we design and connect these systems. Joining me today is Mr. Austin Arrington, founder of the PLANT Group, an ecological design and engineering firm enabling climate adaptation and mitigation by reconnecting people and nature. He also serves as the CTO at MillPont, where he is building geospatial and digital infrastructure to support environmental asset management across agriculture value chains. In this conversation, we will explore what it truly means to move from soil-level impact to system-level transformation, and how engineers, product leaders, and climate innovators can design the infrastructure required for climate-ready agriculture. Thank you, Austin, for joining us today. And before we start, can you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show, Amber. My name is Austin Arrington. Thanks for the intro. I did a great job. Founder of PLANT Group, also CTO of MillPont, which is creating digital trust systems for environmental markets. And I'm just somebody who likes to build technology to help connect humans and nature. And I am located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, here in the United States.
Okay, perfect. So let's get started. So you have worked across regenerative agriculture, green infrastructure, and renewable energy. What originally pulled you towards this intersection of engineering and environmental systems?
I appreciate the question. My start was in green infrastructure. I worked for various companies helping design and install green roofs for stormwater management. From there, I got into urban farming and garden systems, horticultural systems. My first kind of venture into hardware and technology was through irrigation systems, was through working with teams to design hardware and software for smart irrigation to help reduce water consumption, needed to grow vegetation. Mm-hmm. And from there, I got sort of a passion for learning more about the technology behind environmental sciences. So I went and studied environmental science up in Syracuse at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Mm-hmm. And that was 2014, 2016. And that was my introduction to remote sensing technologies. So using satellite imagery to kind of monitor what's happening on the planet through Earth observation systems, machine learning algorithms to analyze that data. And I was also introduced to more Internet of Things technologies and just data science of environmental data in general. And coming out of grad school, 2016, I founded PLANT Group. PLANT is people learning about nature together. And we've had the opportunity to work on a lot of systems, from connected hardware to software to AI, all around climate mitigation and climate adaptation work. And around the same time, I also started working uh, in the agriculture space. So my first foray in the ag tech space was with a venture-backed soil sensor company called Teralytic. I was a software engineer, then a machine learning engineer there. We had designed, worked on a really cool technology, which was IoT, Internet of Things device, a probe that could go into the soil and had sensor packets at multiple depths and was able to monitor moisture, temperature, carbon, and then kind of the really revolutionary thing was it had macronutrient sensors that it could monitor NPK, not nitrogen, phosphorus, but potassium, and then use that data to help inform kind of climate smart agronomic decision making in the fields. At that time and now there was a big concern around nutrient runoff, so kind of excess, agricultural and other non-point sources of pollution going into waterways. So that was a big focus. Started really working at that with technology that was interested in soil monitoring and measuring characteristics of the soil, as the soil is that kind of crucial sponge, not only sequestering carbon, providing a lot of ecosystem services. And then from there, I got introduced to, and all this was through also Plant Group. Some of this was through Plant Group contracts. I worked with ESMC. That was a Plant Group contract, which is they're a nonprofit designing kind of a market-based mechanism where they would work with companies that would enroll farmers and get farmers paid to adopt climate smart practices like cover cropping or tillage reduction. And that was through basically scope 3 greenhouse gas insetting programs. So, different than let's say a Microsoft buying an offset from a tree planting. It was more around direct reductions of companies' emissions within their supply chain, right? So, let's think about how General Mills sources wheat, and what are the the environmental inputs that go into producing that wheat. That was I did about 4 years of work with ESMC, and then at that time went through started getting introduced to more of the compliance layers of that. So went through multiple audits, where you're working with these third-party auditors and verifiers that verify those environmental claims. And then that brought me to working with MillPont, where I'm a CTO now. And MillPont is basically a clearinghouse. It's a digital trust infrastructure that is one of the main solutions on the market right now for mitigating double counting in the environmental claim space. So just like how a bank is going to flag if there's double transactions on your card, the idea is that if there are multiple companies or entities claiming environmental offsets or insets from the same geolocation, that we can catch those and just have more transparent accounting and not overestimate the impact we're having, which ultimately is going to add more integrity to environmental markets.
Right. Yeah, you have used pretty the terms like integrity, which is very important in this space, and also the innovation. I think the innovation which agriculture world in the US is going through, I guess.
Yes, sir. And at the end of the day, from a technology perspective, it comes down to geospatial, GIS, what they call GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and really basing those systems of accounting and geospatial claims, right? So I work a lot with polygons, which are just, lat long coordinates that are literally the boundaries of the areas where things are happening, whether it's like a field that someone's farming or maybe it's a mining operation. It's all about geospatial provenance and having systems to kind of track to the actual geolocation and the time for these claims.
Right. So when we talk about climate ready infrastructure in agriculture, what does that actually mean in practice beyond the buzzword?
Well, if we're talking about climate ready infrastructure in practice, I think beyond the buzzword, for me, it entails having a more holistic look at how ecosystems and our agro ecosystems function, right? So I think that we need to look beyond simple carbon accounting and also look at water quality, also look at biodiversity and the sort of long-term capacity for agro ecosystems to flourish, continue, producing food and goods, but while also maintaining, the organisms, the ecosystems that live in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so agriculture generates enormous environmental value, but often struggles with trust and verification. So, where do you see the biggest gaps today?
Trust and verification. I think there's a lot of the gaps are in sort of the siloed nature of agricultural data. You have a lot of players in the space. You have CPGs, consumer packaged good companies. You have large private agricultural companies. You have what these people call project developers, who are all these startups and companies that are spinning up, creating systems to kind of quantify environmental impact. You have the farmers themselves. So there's data that's living in a lot of different systems, and right now there has been a lack of data standards, but also just a trusted kind of third party that can connect the data in those systems. So I think just the siloed nature of the data has been a blocker. I also think that there are, well, shall we say, vested economic interest in certain business as usual cases, as far as how food is produced and reliance on agrochemicals and fossil fuels in general. I think so. That has to be an aspect of it as well. But even with that, I think there does come a point where, when you're looking at kind of market-based mechanisms of change, even large companies and large, companies in fossil fuel world are seeing that, okay, well, there's a limit, and if we want to continue having profits over the years, we have to start actually kind of regenerating.
Okay, sure. So, MillPont works with geospatial systems and digital deeds linked to environmental outcomes. Why is spatial data so critical for scaling regenerative agriculture?
Well, I think it all gets down to getting to field level accounting, and getting to that granularity of the field. Because when you don't do that and you're dealing with, I don't know, county averages or these sort of broader strokes, it becomes a lot easier for this double counting and these things to happen. So to me, it's important because it's about getting to that granularity of the field level tracking and accounting. And basically, if we can kind of have more assurance that these impacts aren't being double counted across different organizations in the market, then it means that there's higher value to the data, it's more accurate, and it's less likely to be used for like greenwashing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Austin, can you give me an example of a company or multiple companies doing this double accounting? Like, how does it work in practice?
Well, the way it works basically is like you can think about, you can imagine, let's say, and I don't want to put it on the farmer, but let's just say there's a farmer John, and he, let's say that he understands that, okay, Indigo Ag has a program where, hey, if I plant cover crops or apply less fertilizer, I can get paid to do that. I can get, I don't know, $30-$40 an acre, right? Now you've got that company, but then there's other companies that also have programs. So I might go to, Oliver's Offsets and apply those same practices, right? And also get paid. And the way they're getting paid is because a company is subsidizing. A company is saying, oh, well, because I have the data to show that I've reduced this much emissions from my supply chain. Now, the problem is if those companies aren't talking to each other, or the people who's auditing their data don't have a system to check that same claim from that same area was made with somebody else, then you have inaccurate accounting. And you're saying, okay, we've reduced carbon by 3 times as much as what you actually did. So you're actually ending up making the problems worse because you're kind of giving this signal to the market that okay, it's okay to you're overestimating the impact that you're having, which ultimately is not good.
Okay, so I was thinking about greenwashing. Does that comes into picture here? Can I say?
I mean, it could. If it might not be conscious, but yeah, I mean, if a company is using this environmental claim to either be less accountable on their taxes or just to market their product more, yeah, but they don't have the information to show that actually, well, this was already counted, so you can't count it. Then that technically would be greenwashing. That would be kind of like overestimating the positive impact you're having, to make something in your favor.
Okay, sure. So many climate solutions fail at the implementation stage. So from your experience, what are the most common engineering or system design mistake in agri-climate projects?
Yeah, I think I go back to just like putting my product manager, product development hat on, and some common issues that I see is sort of rushing the design phase. Like, I don't know, something that always, as a product manager, always irks me is when people start jumping into like wireframing. It's like, okay, we know the system should look like this before they've even made a PRD, a product requirements document, where you can have a document where everything is just written out and you can circulate it amongst all the stakeholders. You can get in front of the farmers, you can get in front of the scientists, you can get in front of the engineers, and have those proper feedback cycles before you even start to try to design the system. I think that is a big issue. I think another big issue is not figuring out the business model. So a lot of cool technologies, they call MRV, is a huge thing. It's been a big thing. So monitoring, reporting, or measurement, reporting, verification systems, right? Which I worked a lot on those type of systems. A lot of that development was subsidized through the government, through grants. So we had the Climate Smart Commodities Grant in the United States, which a lot of work I did was getting funding through that. And then there's a change in, political power, and that funding dries up or it goes somewhere else. So I do think there's been an over-reliance on federal funds, and at the same time we need federal funds. Like a lot of the work still, it depends on state grants, federal grants, right? But at the same time, if you have that, you still need to work on a business model, because power changes hands, and you have to have part of sustainability is being able to kind of be economically viable and sustainable. So figuring out the business model, and I think people like MillPont, it's going to be different. MillPont's business model is membership based, and that works for them. And these companies will pay that membership fee to have that extra level of assurance and security, that they know that their environmental claims aren't being double counted. So it might be a subscription fee if you have a different type of product. You have to kind of figure out what that market fit is, and figure out the right business model to have it be self-sufficient.
Right. Austin, I was just thinking, like, have you worked with only American businesses, or have you worked internationally as well with any companies?
Yeah, no, I've worked internationally, mostly American, but yeah, no, I mean, like, I've done some work with SustainCert, which on the kind of auditing side, they're heavily European based. Yeah, but what were you asking about?
So how is the scene in Europe, for example, compared to US?
Yeah, no, I mean, in some ways way more advanced, right? Because like a lot, like yeah, so getting to go through the auditing and work with those people, um, like Sustained Cert, it does help you get on top of your game because Europe has been thinking about compliance around and environmental data for way longer, and in some ways they're way more advanced, especially with the LCA life cycle analysis, and that sort of analysis. Yeah, they're really pretty advanced. At the same time, I find them to be less technological, less kind of product focused as Americans. So a lot of the really cool thing, the magic can happen between, I think, between working together across different cultures, right? But yeah, no, I've loved working with Europeans. I felt like I've learned a lot from them.
Sure. So, how do digital systems help bridge the gap between farmers on the ground and investors or institutions looking to finance sustainable agriculture?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, investors, they want to look at data, and you'd be shocked even with larger operations, how much of the data hasn't just been tracked properly. And so, yeah, and even if it is kind of getting it into normalizing that data and getting it to a format that can be consumed by investors and stakeholders is a big deal. So yeah, I think it's all about getting that data, and in some cases, like you also need to have historical data, and maybe a farmer, they just took over that land, so we don't have access to historical data. So you have to look at satellite imagery and infer different things. I mean, getting all the data needed to make an investment is really, I think, what it's about.
Okay. And like, do you have dashboards which you provide to your clients which showcase data for everything?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, dashboards are usually a part of the deliverable, and I think, a lot of times you're going to have different views. So you might have a farmer view where the farmer can kind of look at their data, what they've done over the years, the impact that they're having. But usually with these projects, you want to start being able to kind of aggregate and roll that data up at the project level, at the buyer level, So then it's all about kind of aggregating to different levels based on who the stakeholder is. Maybe it's even a state, state of Nebraska or something like that. So yeah, I mean, being able to service all those different use cases and user types with different dashboards is a huge part of the value that you're bringing.
Okay. So there is a growing concern about greenwashing in environmental markets.
Yeah.
How can better infrastructure reduce that risk and increase the credibility?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a lot of when people hear greenwashing, I think it's always kind of maybe subconsciously assumed that it's malevolent. It's like, these bad guys plotting behind the scenes, when a lot of times it might just be ignorance. And so that's where a company like MillPont creating a ledger, basically a ledger, and getting, hey, we're going to be a third party. We know that you guys are competing. You don't trust each other. We'll be the ledger. You guys write your data to us via our API. We'll do the checks. We're not going to expose to you who's overlapping with what, but we're going to work with each of you. And just like when you have a issue with a bank, they're not going to say exactly, but they're going to take care of it. They're going to look into it and find out where the errors are, and they're going to take care of it. And so that's what's been missing. And I think those type of systems where we can get more towards sharing data in a secure way is what it's all about. And it's not just about technology, it's about trust, right? And there is a huge aspect of it from a business side that's about culture and that's about relationships. It's like at the end of the day, there are organizations and entities and even people out there that garner trust among multiple companies and multiple organizations in multiple states. And they do that based on their reputation, you know, and like who they know and kind of, you know, so there's a huge aspect of it too. And if anybody who's out there wanting to build a startup in the environmental space, and you're getting to a place where you need to start getting companies' data and working with companies' data, you have to understand one aspect is the technology and making sure you can show that it's secure, and that you're protecting, you know, PII, personal identifying information. So there's a huge cybersecurity aspect to it. But then there's also that relationship access to it. Did you put the time in? Did you go and have the meetings, drink the beers with the farmers? You know what I'm saying? And really build up those relationships. Because at the same time, farmers they don't necessarily trust Wall Street. So, you know, there is that aspect to it too, where finance needs to work with the people who are going to put the work in to work with the people on the ground and build that trust.
Right. Austin, I was just thinking about the technology of blockchain. I was discussing with something that blockchain can become a really important or can be used in this space.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has been wanting to find that solution, like as far as I can remember with blockchain, is that it always makes sense. I haven't yet seen the ultimate version of it yet. It seems a lot of times it's like a solution in search of a problem or something. Now, there are people doing cool stuff like the Hedera Foundation. I would definitely look into them. They have a really cool distributed ledger. It's like a blockchain, but it's not quite a blockchain, but it's the same idea. It uses the hash graph network, and they have an open source community. They've built this Guardian platform, which is like an open source MRV. They've done some cool things. But yeah, I think that a distributed ledger makes sense. And it's something that I think MillPont might even be, you know, look into in the future, because if part of that trust network is that you could have each node host a version of the ledger, then yeah, that's an added security that, you know, there's not one party that's going to be manipulating the data for their own interests. So I do think it makes sense.
Right. So you describe yourself as a spaceship Earth thinker.
Yeah.
How does that mindset influence the way you design products and systems?
Yeah, so Spaceship Earth, for any viewers who aren't familiar with that term, is coming from this architect and ecological thinker, Buckminster Fuller. They call him Bucky Fuller. He's the fellow who designed the geodesic dome, if you've ever been to Epcot Center. But he has a book called Spaceship Earth, and it sort of is a thought experiment for you to think about, like, well, what if we start thinking about Earth, this wonderful orb that we are here in space, as a spaceship, and we're here with our crew, and we have so many resources to get to where we're going. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about that book was that he, you know, it's like acknowledging fossil fuels are very useful. Like they actually have a lot of power, and they helped us develop to where we are now, like as a society and as a species, you know. And it's like, but we've kind of, for like the past, like whatever, hundreds of years, we've been kind of partying. It's like we've been acting like it's a big party and just blowing all the fossil fuels and drinking and partying. And it's like, what if we were a little bit more thoughtful about how we use resources, and we use them to kind of build the next layer and the next level? Okay, it's the renewable energy, the regenerative infrastructure. So I was really inspired by that, of just kind of thinking about resources in that way of, and that's how I think about AI. And that's for me, like my version of that is AI, where like me and the team just use AI like a bunch of freaking nut jobs. Like we're just use it for everything. But I look at it as sort of, I don't want to use AI forever, but I have this incredibly powerful tool. I feel like the clock is ticking. So let me like enhance our team with superpowers to build the next level of systems, regenerative systems.
Okay, perfect. So for engineers and product leaders who want to work in climate or agriculture, what skills or perspectives do you think will matter most in the next decade?
Yeah. Well, obviously, um, you know, being the best coder in the room is not as important as it was, or even being the best Excel wizard or data analyst. A lot of that is not as important as it was. As you know, we all have AI at our fingertips now. So I think systems thinking, um, from engineering and a product developer, understanding systems thinking, reading some books on that is important. Um, I think the social aspect, the soft skills are going to continue to be more important. Like I look at it with medicine, and
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, now it's becoming about can you connect with patients, which it always has been, but it's more that now. And I think about that as like, can you connect with communities? Like at the end of the day, you've got people making millions of dollars on carbon markets. What about the ranch hands? What about the Latinos? What about the underserved people who are working the land? And I think that's going to be increasingly important, is building the systems that are going to protect those people's rights and the people on the ground. Because at the end of the day, you still need to interface with the physical world, and I think about that too with like the green infrastructure stuff. It's like I'm actually really grateful that I have that background in building things, because at the end of the day, people need to plant trees. Well, I guess there's going to be robots that can do that too, but I mean, design also, like designing systems is really important. I think, yeah, systems level thinking, design level thinking, and kind of like community organizing and being able to do that work.
Perfect. So, thank you, Austin. This has been a fascinating conversation. What really stands out is how climate impact in agriculture isn't just about better practices in the soil, but about the systems that connect data, trust, finance, and long-term decision making. Thank you for sharing your insights on how engineering and product thinking can build climate ready agriculture value chains, and for reminding us that real climate leadership often happens behind the scenes in the infrastructure we choose to build. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to follow the Climate Leadership Podcast and share it with anyone working at the intersection of climate, technology, and agriculture. Until next time, take care and have a nice day. Bye bye.